Hi, and welcome back to the Reinvented Delaware Podcast. If you're new to the channel, I'm Steve.
And I'm Cindy.
And we are Reinvented Delaware. And today we're going to talk about finding supplies for projects.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one because we've had to do an awful lot of sourcing of some of the strangest things. And we want to talk about how we've sourced the items that we have reinvented and repurposed and upcycled as far as making them something completely different. Because part of what we wanted to do is take an item that had one intended purpose and turn it into something else with a whole new purpose. Like that's been one of our goals with most of our projects that we've done here.
Yeah, and from the business side and even from the personal side, cost is always a factor. And so because our store was in a vendor booth, people come in and they're not expecting to pay big box store prices or furniture store prices. So getting a deal on supplies oftentimes allows us to price things in a range where people are satisfied.
Mm-hmm. So we had to do a lot of creative resourcing to find those items so that they did not cost us a lot of money, so that in turn we could pass on the savings to our local customers. And that's just evolved into us sharing those tutorials, those project tutorials on our blog, reinventeddelaware.com, and also here on YouTube, over on YouTube, where we have shared lots of other videos of some of the projects that we have worked on. So today we're going to talk about how to resource, where to find these things, and the supplies that we have used over the years to reinvent and take one item and turn it into something with a whole new purpose. Let's get started with that.
So one of the things that I get asked a lot is where I find wood. And if you are any way familiar with woodworking, you know that during COVID, we saw lumber prices just skyrocket. And we're told because the demand far outweighed the supply at the time. But plywood that was selling at $30 a sheet pre-COVID was $80, $90 a sheet.
Wow.
And,
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff like Baltic birch, things like that come from other countries, and it's no longer accessible. And so the supply dwindles and the demand stays the same, so the prices again skyrocket. Mm-hmm. And the idea of people just throwing away perfectly good lumber just drives me crazy. And a lot of people do it. And so, people have said, well, where do you find the wood? And so one of the places to look is in classified ads. And here in our community, here in Delaware, we have a publication called The Guide, and it is statewide. It actually goes into Delaware and Virginia, and it's a whole bunch of classifieds, but one of those classifieds is free. And a lot of times you will get people that have pieces of furniture that they just want to get rid of. Free. Mm-hmm. If you haul it, you can have it. And so because I'd like to turn firewood, I am always looking for trees that are cut down that people just want to get rid of, or lumber that people want to get rid of. You can also check with your utility companies because they go out and they trim trees around power lines and trees that might have fallen down during storms, and that wood is usually discarded. It's usually given away or thrown away.
Let's get back to the lumber for a second, because I just want to be clear, because I'm kind of learning something here too. So this publication, it's called, what is it called again?
I believe it's called the Sussex Guide or the Guide.
The Guide.
Just
it's
the
like
guide.
A little newspaper, and maybe we should have brought one to show you, but it's like a little newspaper feeling booklet.
You can link it because they have a website.
Okay, I'll link it down below in the description or down in the show notes. So it's a little publication. People call in and say, I want to place a little ad. Does it cost those people to put the ad?
It does cost money, but it's very minimal, and then there's a lot of advertising.
So it costs money to make a listing, but it doesn't cost money to get the publication.
The publication is free.
The publication is free, but if you want to put a listing in it, that's how they're running their business. So you can put let's say we had an old tree, or somebody has a tree that fell down in their yard and they want to get rid of it, and they don't want to spend money to get rid of it because it's expensive. They could go to the guide and say, I have a cherry tree that fell. If you come and get it, like Steve said, you haul. How did you say that?
You haul it away and you can have it.
It's for free.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will do that. Or maybe they did a little project around their home, like a reconstruction kind of project, and they might have extra 2x4s. So they could make a listing. Hey, we have extra 2x4s. If you come and get it, it's yours free. We've gotten wood that way.
Yep.
So the guide is a really good way to do that. And I'm sure that your community, your local area probably has something similar. I think that that's a common thing in the United States, that people have these towns or publications like this so people can kind of get rid of their stuff. I think you could probably do the same thing on Facebook Marketplace. I think that that's another big place. We don't do a lot of Facebook, but I know that, in this day and age, there's a lot of listings on Facebook Marketplace that would be similar to this guide that we're talking about. So you could check out those areas. Excuse me. You also have another really great resource. Am I jumping the gun on the...
There's actually a lumber company, and they sell to contractors, much like Lowe's and Home Depot. This is a smaller business, and they tend to cater to local contractors. And so there's two ways. One is a shipping container that I'm not sure what they ship in it, but they're built with oak, mahogany.
Yeah. So it's like a pallet.
It's very similar to a pallet, and the lumber that they're constructed out of is rough cut oak. I found some mahogany, some maple. There's some poplar. Some of it is in bad shape, but if you're willing to pull the nails out and make the effort to take the piece apart, you can get some really nice rough cut lumber.
So if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to try to put a little picture in of one of these pallets, but let's give a good description. So everybody knows what a pallet is, like the standard pallet that is used for, I don't know, what are those pallets? What do they ship with those pallets?
Yeah, mostly either bulk items or heavy items that they can be picked up with a forklift.
Yeah, well, these pallets that he's talking about are the pieces of wood to make the pallet itself are probably 5 or 6 feet long, and they're about 6 inches wide, and they're a good inch or inch and a half thick.
Yeah, sometimes 2 inches. Now, when I say pallet, these are more like a box without a lid.
Okay.
Some of them don't have a bottom, some of them do, but there's 4 sides, and as Cindy said, the lumber ranges anywhere between 4 foot and close to 6. And if you're willing to take the nails out, which can be sometimes time consuming, and then cut off any bad spots, because there are sometimes splits in the wood or maybe a knot. But I've learned to kind of see that even though it's only 5.5 inches with a big split down the side of it, I can still get a 4-inch piece of oak. And that would cost you $15-$20 at the lumber store.
Right. And if you're willing to do the work and stop by the one particular store that we go to, my husband will ride by that store and he did many, over the years that we were selling our items, he would ride by there on a regular basis, because you never really know what day they're going to put these box pallets out. And that store also has a lot of free lumber that might have been warped. I know he's gotten 2x4s that the end of it would have a slight warp in it, but the rest of the board was in really good shape. So you could use that. So if you have I'm not going to say that the large box stores would do this kind of service, but if you have a smaller lumber store in your area, just start checking it out, because you have no idea what they might be giving away for free out at the front of the store. That's where they do this. So they all have items that have to be shipped in, and they need these heavy-duty crates in order to do that. So check in your local area. If you have a local lumber store like we're talking about for the Delaware area, they might have something like that too. So I want you to be sure and get that resource. Where are some other things? What are some other things that you have sourced?
Well, as Cindy just related to, a lot of times the contractors that build houses or do projects, oftentimes either they order too much lumber and they return some, or in one particular case, I got a huge stack of 2x6s and 2x8s that the contractor had left out in the rain after finding that they did not need it for their project. They returned it to the store. The store didn't want to sell it to customers, and they put it out in their free pile. So,
at the same store?
Yeah, at the same store.
Oh, wow.
So I actually did a lot of projects and built a workbench out of that lumber. So ask, if you go into the store, and again, I probably would not do this at Home Depot or Lowe's, because I'm sure they get asked a lot. But if you have a local store, The mom and pop store or just one that caters locally, ask someone what they do with returned items, and they will more than likely tell you that you're welcome to them because they're paying to have it hauled away. Mm-hmm. So another source of really, really good lumber that a lot of people ignore are furniture parts. So you can oftentimes find a tabletop, and especially older furniture was made out of maple or cherry. It's solid, and it can be cut up and made into projects. I've done that many times. You do have to remove the hardware. And when I'm talking about this, I know there's some out in our audience that are saying, but I don't have a lot of tools. I don't have the tools to do that. And quite honestly, ask a neighbor, borrow a table saw. There's some videos on YouTube that'll show you how to square the lumber. And if you were able to get the lumber in 30 minutes, you would be able to have yourself a nice pile of usable lumber. No nails, and it'd be fairly square and ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good tip. We used tabletops from dining room tables because my husband would replace them with a farmhouse style of table. Well, that left us with this solid piece of wood that could be anywhere from 5 feet wide. I don't know the measurements of a dining room table, pretty big. And it would be a nice solid piece of wood that then could be cut down to use for other projects. We did that quite a bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, the hassle is to take all the screws, make sure that there's any hardware underneath the table. You want to make sure you get all that stuff out. But a lot of it is really, really nice. We found oak, mahogany, maple, cherry, some really, really nice hardwoods that we could then use for other projects. Picture frames, boxes, anything that you want to make. There's lumber out there without having to buy new stuff. Mm-hmm. So another thing to think about when you salvage these things is there is a lot of hardware that is still usable. And many times it's often very high quality hardware. So don't be afraid to salvage things like hinges, doorknobs, latches, things like that. And don't throw that stuff away because Cindy is the queen of keeping unusual things and adding them to projects. But those things will come into use. So if you have a little organizer, a little toolbox, make sure you keep old screws, hinges, doorknobs, spindles, things like that.
Yeah, hinges especially we've used a lot of. We've used the doorknobs from old doors. That's been a really fun thing to collect.
Been a fun thing to collect. I know one of the things that Cindy got a lot of comments on was using spindles as an accent on some of her frames and pieces. And we would cut them in half using a bandsaw, and then she would attach them, and she made them chalk holders. I think you've had some other things you've done as well.
Yeah, definitely. So the spindles that we're talking about, some of those spindles were from a broken chair. So we could pick up a broken chair at an auction, sometimes free and sometimes for $1. Mm-hmm. And we weren't worried that it was broken because we were looking at the spindles. So we would take the chair apart, and we would keep the usable parts. For me, the usable parts were spindles. I have a little bit of an obsession with spindles, don't I?
Yeah.
So some of the smaller spindles, and then also on some of the legs on tabletops, when we've been to salvage yards, one that I'll share, in fact, we visited one of our favorites here recently, and I'll link that video down in the show notes, and over on YouTube, I'll link that video so that you can watch it. It's at Linda's. Or Oma's Oldies. And you can go there and find all sorts of furniture parts where like a dining room table would have come apart because of use and it just got broken. So you would see the legs in a separate place. You'd see the apron in a second place, and maybe the tabletop itself was completely missing. So we would save the spindle legs from that tabletop or the Queen Anne legs or whatever, and we would save those pieces and make other things into them. So if you can find any of those unusual pieces, another piece, I was talking in our last episode about one of my favorite pieces of furniture is a washstand. Well, many people don't want the harp, and the harp is really a beautiful, beautiful piece, a beautiful shape of part of the furniture that I just love. The harps, you can find the harps all by themselves, and we've used those parts and pieces a lot too. When we've seen old doors, sometimes the door is there, but the doorknob is not, but you can find a whole box of these doorknobs at auctions and that kind of thing. So if you find those unusual kind of pieces, I think that that's an important thing to try to hold on to if you can.
Yeah, even windows. I know we were bike riding in North Carolina and in a little wooded area, and I know you're going to remember this, but somebody had taken old windows and made a little book nook
Yes.
and just a little seating area, and it was really cool. It was a cool way to repurpose the windows, but also just as a service. So you could pull up.
We need to make one of those.
Yeah, we do. You could pull up and you could take a book out of their little bin and you could sit and read it and then put it back. But they also invited you, if you wanted to take a book home, to bring one back. And so it's kind of a library that's free, but people bring things in, return.
And it was made out of old windows.
It was old windows. With, I believe it had a piece of tin on the top to keep the rain out, and it was full. So it was getting a lot of use, and quite honestly, it was in the middle of nowhere. It was in the middle of like a wooded trail. So
That sounds like a video tutorial, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
We need to make one of those so we can share that idea with everyone.
and we have some old windows. So,
Yeah.
As Cindy said, a lot of the hardware is made out of brass, and you don't find that. A lot of the stuff we find today is brass plated, and solid brass is really expensive. So take advantage of that. There are a number of ways to clean it up, polish it up, and make it look new again. And if that's not your look, then it has the patina already, and it's going to look nice on your piece.
So let's talk about some of the strangest things that we have added to a project over the years of selling our items and doing this whole Reinvented Delaware business.
So do you want to go first?
I don't know.
Okay.
How about if you go first? You go first.
So
What's the weirdest thing that we've ever done with furniture pieces?
So one of the things that we enjoy purchasing and we tend to find in abundance are old carpenter's toolboxes. And
Oh, yes.
so these are fairly large, maybe 3 foot in length, and they're 12, 18 inches deep, and then they will about 12, 18 inches wide. So they're fairly large box. They have handles, and what the carpenter would do is when they came to your house, this was their toolbox. So they oftentimes have drawers or shelves, little place where they would fasten their saws, maybe keep their chisels and all the planes, the woodworking tools that they used. And so these boxes are well built and they look really cool.
If you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to pop in a couple of pictures of these wooden toolboxes that we're talking about, just so you can get an idea. But nowadays, a carpenter would use like a bag.
Yeah, a bag or pickup truck. I mean, you can
Well,
a lot of the carpenters have toolboxes in their truck, or I've seen a lot they pull a small trailer and they keep everything organized in cabinets in a trailer. So you don't see these large wooden boxes as much. But again, you find them at yard sales, you find them at auctions, and so when we started to do them, Cindy found some and then would redo them and put them in our vendor spot, and they were super popular. People used them as coffee tables.
Yeah. So when he says when we would redo them, we're going to tell you about some of the things that we've done to these wood boxes. But basically, we would take these old boxes, scrub them like crazy because they're filthy dirty, scrub them, and then we would come up with an idea of how to reinvent and repurpose it into a whole new use, because that's something we like to do. We like to take an item that we had for one use and turn it into something with a whole new use. And we did it a lot with these wood boxes. So that's what he means by when we would redo them. We're going to tell you what we've redone with some of these boxes. So go ahead.
So Cindy had the idea to add Queen Anne legs and an apron to an old wooden box. And this came out of the salvage pile because I had some old Queen Anne's legs. And in fact, I still have some out in my shop. And so we took the box, we added an apron, and we added these Queen Anne legs and made it just a small, I guess, side table. Is that what you call it? Sofa table.
And by the way, this was one of the harebrained ideas that we've talked before about this, that I would come up with these crazy ideas and I knew in my mind that it was going to look amazing. And you would be like, okay, I don't know if that's going to look good, but somehow you were able to take my vision and actually implement it. Because I can come up with the vision, but you can come up with the mechanics of it. You are the one that can figure out how to make that vision come true and come to life. So we had this old wood toolbox. He added the apron and the Queen Anne legs. And after we assembled it, I'm going to pop in a little picture, and I will leave a link to the blog post for that down in the show notes, or if you're over on YouTube, you can see it down in the description below. And then we sold it, and I sold it as like a little storage unit for gloves and hats. So it was narrow, and it didn't take up much floor space. And I suggested to people that they could use it near their back door as a place to throw in the gloves, where the kids could throw in their gloves or their hats at the end of the day. They could prop open the lid and make it a decorative kind of thing with flowers and such during the off season when it wasn't winter. They could really use it for any kind of little storage thing, or it could just be a decorative piece where they could, put whatever. If you hear anything in the background, by the way, that's our little dog.
That's our dog.
And I might grab him. If I get an opportunity, I'll grab him so you can see him here on camera and not just hear his sniffing. But anyway, that's what all that's going on. So anyway, back to that Queen Anne leg wood toolbox. You put it together, we sold it, people loved it, and we made a lot of those, didn't we?
We made a lot of those, and I think the reason that sticks in mind is because it took me outside of my comfort zone, because I'd never made an apron, and so I had to, a lot of angles, and then put it together, and then make it look aesthetically pleasing, like it was made that way. And so I think that's the biggest thing is, when you get these old parts or you get this old salvage, is a lot of times we think, I'll never use it. But try to kind of think ahead of what it might become, what you could use it for. And again, I tend to be a hoarder, so you have to know, when to throw stuff out or when you're not going to use it. But there are certainly a lot of things that are very usable. Not only if you're doing a project, but also in doing maintenance or repairing things around the house.
Very true. So I would have to say, if that's your most unusual item that we've ever repurposed, I'm sure that there are others. But the one that pops into my mind is kind of along the lines of that wood box. And I'm going to pop a little picture in so you can see it. If you're listening on just the audio version of this, I encourage you to go over to YouTube and watch the visual version of this, because I want you to see these two projects that we're mentioning here. The box with the Queen Anne legs, and then the one that I remember is an old wood toolbox that we repainted. It looks so chippy and so perfect. We added caster wheels to it, and it was the height of a coffee table. So it was perfect for a coffee table. We had locking casters on it. And then on the front, you put a piece of spindle on that you cut lengthwise. You've got to see this. So be sure to look at the picture that I'm going to pop in here. And I'll also share the blog post for this particular project, actually for both of those projects. But you attach this spindle flattened piece, it's hard to describe, on the front of it, and it really added some character. And then for the lid to open up, because these wood toolboxes are great storage, especially if you're using it as a coffee table. I took, for the handle, I took an antique glass doorknob with the back plate that was brass. I can't remember that. Well, we'll see. But it's beautiful, and it almost looks like a diamond sitting on top of this wood toolbox. I know that the lady that bought it, that's kind of how she viewed it. And one of the things that I love about doing projects like this is it takes something really unusual, like this glass doorknob belongs on a door. It doesn't belong on a wood toolbox, but yet it looked amazing, and it also had a purpose. It helped you to lift the lid so that you could see and get to the things that you were storing inside this. The lady that bought it loved it. I posted it on Instagram. She messaged me. She's like, I'm getting right over to your shop and I'm getting that. It's mine. So somebody is living with that in their home and they're really enjoying it.
Yeah, and while we're talking about the things that we do, I think it's important to emphasize that the blog talks about tutorials. In other words, how to do things. And I know a lot of people, and I've been in this boat before, is you think, I could never do something like that. And so my son always says, keep your expectations low, because you're going to screw up and you're going to make mistakes. But that's what makes a project unique. And also, don't be afraid to fail, because...
well, I think that's where you learn.
Yes.
When you make a mistake, when you fail, you go, okay, I'm not going to do that again. That didn't work. And that's how you learn for the next time.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know cutting dovetails is the challenge for me. And I have a tool that allows me to do it. But I want to learn to do it by hand. I turn on these YouTube videos and I watch these craftsmen, and 30 seconds they have perfect dovetails. And I've literally been through a whole chunk of scrap wood trying to do it myself. And you get frustrated, and I stop, and then I'll go back at some point and I'll try it again. But that's the only way you're going to learn to do it, is by doing it. So don't be afraid. Also, don't be afraid to see the potential that a project has. I know we have, one is an old toolbox that a friend gave me. It was in his dad's shop after his father passed away. We got this thing, it was oil soaked. A mouse or a rat had chewed through the corner of it.
Oh, wow.
And everybody looked at it, was like, that's junk. But we scrubbed it out and we got the oil out of it, sealed it, and then sanded it down, did some repairs, and we still have it, and it's beautiful. It really is. And also a cabinet that we got from an old school. They were throwing it out. My brother got it and wouldn't fit in his house, so he said, here, do you want this? And this thing had 30 coats of gray paint on it. And, I'm thinking, I'm going to put it in my garage to put stuff in. And Cindy saw it and said, oh, no, that's going in our house. And so we stripped the wood off, and it is in our house to this day. The unique thing is my father had a part in the construction of this thing. And so it's just in our house today. It's one of our prized possessions, and we'll go to our children, when we pass over the Rainbow Bridge. But we are, I would have never seen that potential that piece had, but Cindy did. So don't be afraid to experiment or look at a piece and say, this could be something really amazing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip that we could end on. Just keep your mind open when you see some of these things. Don't dismiss it for the original purpose that it had, and instead keep your mind open and try to envision that piece into something brand new. So that's a lot of fun. And when you watch and read blog posts about different projects that we've worked on and many others, there's lots of information online about different projects that have been repurposed. That will get your own creative juices and your own creative mind. You go, oh, I have a piece that kind of looks like that. I think I could do that. And then that will really get your mind going and in gear. And that's just a lot of fun. Hasn't it been fun?
It has been fun. Yeah. And, I get a lot of people that have looked at this lumber that we've reclaimed from the pallets. And one in particular is like, well, it's too much work to pull the nails out. But and it is a lot of work. It is difficult. But when you look at the finished project and that was a box sitting in a trash pile at a lumber yard, and now look what it is. I mean, you just get a certain appreciation or satisfaction that you took that lumber. Plus, it is saving a tree because you're using this lumber and it didn't come from a tree that's been cut down to make brand new.
Yeah, so you're saving a tree. You're saving space in the landfills. I mean, we really need to get serious about thinking about that, not just throwing away and buying new, but if we can repurpose and reinvent and upcycle, we're really saving the landfills. So it's saving in so many ways. When I think about our own home and the things that we've repurposed and that we have upcycled here for our own home, we have saved a lot of money for our own decor, not just for the items that we sold, but it's also a really big savings for our own decor. And it's been fun. And it's been a fun thing that we can work on together. We've worked individually. He can work on his part out in his workshop. I can work in my little workshop or here in my office. And then we can come together on those projects. And I just think it's been a good experience, and we're just going to keep on.
Yeah, and I'm going to put in a shameless plug because I get a lot of people. I made some cutting boards as a gift for a friend, and they made the comment that, oh, I could never do something like that. And the truth is, it's fairly simple. So there is a YouTube channel. It's called Woodworking for Mere Mortals. This is the shameless plug.
Yes.
A guy named Steve Ramsey, and he does such an excellent job of basic woodworking. So
I'm going to link that channel down below because you guys really need to watch his tutorials are amazing.
His tutorials, he works out of his garage. He doesn't have high-end tools, and he's probably going to be mad that I said that. But,
no. No, I think that he would be thrilled that he's not using the fancy schmancy newest and latest and greatest.
But he will show you techniques that you, with just a few tools, can do. And I just encourage you. I know coming out of law enforcement, and I used to tell new police officers, you have to have a hobby that takes your mind away from work and all the stuff that goes on, the stresses of the day. For me, woodworking is doing that, and hopefully there's some out there listening to us today that's the same thing. But you can get a lot of enjoyment out of creating, and you don't have to spend a lot of money to do it.
No, you don't. Well, I think we're going to end on that note. And one of the things that my husband and I want to do is inspire you to get creative, to make over some items, to build something new with inexpensive supplies, to just get creative and make things for your own home. Now, if you have a vendor booth, these might be some great ideas that you could sell, repurpose yourself and then sell them in your vendor booth. I'm all about helping people do that kind of thing because we were so successful and we've watched so many YouTube videos and read so many blog posts that have inspired us to get to this point, and we just kind of want to give back. And this is one of the ways that we're doing it here on YouTube and on all the podcast players, Spotify, Apple. There's just so many. We're going to be in all the places, so we're excited about that. Do you have anything else you want to share with us?
So I just, on that note, just want to encourage you that if you like this, you want to see more, send us your ideas. What would you like to know? What would you like us to talk about? What would you like us to show? And
you can send that Cindy at reinventeddelaware.com. I'm going to put that email address down in the show notes and down in the description of the YouTube video. You could leave a comment on YouTube if you wanted to. Tell us what you want us to talk about.
So, and if you like this video and you want to see more, please like and subscribe. If you really hate this video, just give us a like anyway.
Yeah.
So we won't tell anyone.
Or tell us that you didn't enjoy it. Yep. We can take it.
Yep. Or tell us what we can do better, because we do want to improve. But we enjoy doing this. And again, I think this enhances Cindy's blog of the tutorials. We're just average, everyday people, and you can do the same things that Cindy does or the same things that I do.
Well, we really enjoyed having you here. Thanks for listening and thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.